Welcome to this daily coronavirus update. We are bringing you every weekday starting now, 1 o'clock Eastern Time, 10 a.m. Pacific. We aim to bring you the newest information with what's happening on the coronavirus pandemic. My name is Gasia, Mikaelian. We have a couple of things coming up that we're either going to be able to bring you in the coming minutes or in the coming hours, as we are going to be live with you for that time. First of all, we now know that President Trump is expected to speak in about 2 hours from right now. He is expected to speak on the coronavirus pandemic and talk about the national response. Again, that's happening at noon Pacific time, so in 2 hours from right now. We also know that the World Health Organization chief there says that Europe is considered the epicenter of the worldwide coronavirus epidemic and pandemic. The WHO just started using that language a couple of days ago. So that having been said, again, this broadcast aims to bring you the newest information, also to help reassure some of your fears. We're going to be talking with doctors, travel experts. Also, we're going to talk about how the coronavirus might be impacting you at work, what happens you have to stay home to either be quarantined or to care for someone who is ill. All these topics and more. Let's talk about the effect the coronavirus is having on stocks, because it is a dramatic one. We'll get to that in a second. First, though, to the latest numbers. I'd like to pull them up because they're being adjusted as we speak. We're going to start with, I believe, a worldwide view, and we're also going to hear from health experts. Let's start, though, with what is happening in the United States. This map should be familiar to you by now. It does look like Washington State is still in the unfortunate lead, if you will. Washington State has the most coronavirus cases confirmed from anybody statewide. Washington State alone has 450 confirmed cases. We mentioned the WHO is speaking on this issue, as is members of the White House Coronavirus Task Force. In fact, the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease, Dr. Anthony Fauci, spoke with Fox and Friends about what happens next. So let's hear from Dr. Fauci now.
So even though you could say we're going to have a lot more infections, there are going to be a lot of people that are going to be infected, the critical issue is, what are you going to do about it? And that's what we're doing now. We're doing things that are interfering with the natural flow of infection, because if you leave the virus to its own devices, it will go like this, and then it'll go way, way up and then come back down. How do we know that? We see it in China. We're seeing it a little bit now in Korea, and we likely, with a lot of suffering they're going through, we're going to also see it in Italy. Our job as an American public, as health officials, and all of us in America, is to cooperate to do two things: to prevent new infections from coming in, and to deal with the ones that we have by containment and mitigation. So even though you can make a projection that the possibility that you're going to have these many infections, these many infections, or these many infections, what you need to do is to try and get this peak, which we know occurs if you don't do hardly anything, to become a smaller hump. That hump will still have a lot of people getting infected, but a lot of lives will be saved and a lot of suffering will be avoided. That's the goal of what we're doing.
Dr. Anthony Fauci there speaking about the importance of really jumping on top of the coronavirus and getting those numbers down as soon as possible. Straight back to those numbers again, we'll pop up this national map. You can see that Fox has been tracking the numbers as it relates to the United States. Washington State still in the unfortunate lead. It has more cases than any other state. 457 cases confirmed in Washington State. New York is next with 328 confirmed cases of the coronavirus there. Then we have California back on the West Coast with 198. Massachusetts back on the East Coast has 108. Colorado has 45. Now let's focus in on how many people have died of the coronavirus in the United States. 41 people are confirmed to have died from the coronavirus here in the U.S. Washington State is home to most of those deaths. 31 people have died in Washington State. To the south of there, California has seen 4 deaths related to the coronavirus pandemic. Straight to Wall Street here, because stocks are again moving in a different direction than they were this time yesterday. We see the Dow open very sharply up, made some major gains. That's calmed down just a little bit, but still this green alone should be enough to help investors fear a little tiny bit better. But when you talk about these numbers, yes, they are much higher than we've seen certainly yesterday, after the market suffered the worst drop in more than 20 years. I think we saw the worst number since 1987 yesterday. So again, the Dow Jones on the plus side now, gaining about 2.5%. but we will have to see what happens until the end of the session, which is still about 3 hours from now. S&P showing a nice bump of 2.5% as well. The NASDAQ is almost there. Again, we caution against too much exuberance over these numbers, but certainly it is nice to see green for a change. Let's talk about what's happening with your health and the concerns I know many of you have been reaching out to us about when it comes to your health, that of perhaps your parents or the very young ones in your lives. Let's get some of those questions answered. I'm happy to welcome Dr. Ranjan Misra, head of internal medicine, a specialist there at the John Muir Health. You're based in the San Francisco area. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Misra. When you look at these numbers and you see that they continue to get higher, I know officials said they expect this, but I assume there could be some concern among the general public.
Sure, you're absolutely right. There is a concern. There should be a concern because when there's concern, there's also a plan. And I think that's what we need to concentrate on. We know that numbers are going to increase because more people are going to be tested. We heard from Dr. Fauci today, who said that private sector is now going to get involved, which is fantastic news. What that means for the general public is that more tests are going to be widely available as soon as hopefully in the next week. And the tests that are also coming through, they're going to be more rapid than what we've seen. As far as reports go, some of these tests will be 10 times faster in getting results back than what we have right now. So yes, be concerned, but turn that concern into something proactive. And the one main thing I keep saying again and again is make sure you're doing whatever you can and taking whatever precautions you can at a personal level so that you not only help yourself, but you also help everyone around you, because this is going to be a team effort. It's not going to be something that we can handle and control by ourselves.
This means hand washing, avoiding close contact, making sure you have the medicine you need because you don't want to get sick from something else and end up taking care away from someone who might urgently need it for the coronavirus. I know, Dr. Misra, you are based there in the San Francisco Bay Area. A number of schools in your area have closed. We're seeing some of the biggest school districts. I know LA Unified just announced its closing. A lot of people are questioning, why is my neighboring school district open, but mine is closed? And let's listen back again now to Dr. Anthony Fauci as he explains at least his philosophy when it comes to being aggressive in school closures and the like.
But my own philosophy is better do more than less. The trouble is, some people say if you do all that, you're going to be fatigued, you're going to ruin the economy. But we need to not worry about that now. We need to worry about protecting the American people. So if people do something like stopping a sport event or having a sporting event occur just with the players and not the audience, I don't have a problem with that at all.
Dr. Misra, are you hearing from parents who are taking their children out of school voluntarily or perhaps wondering why their school is closing? Some people call it an overreaction.
I'm hearing a little bit of both. I have a lot of friends, a lot of physician friends who have kids not only in school but in daycares, and we're seeing progressive shutdown of all kinds of places, schools, daycares, etc. And as inconvenient as it can be, I want to assure you, and all the experts and all the health officials agree on this. This is the right thing to do. And what's important to understand is we need to make these changes and put them into effect sooner than later. The sooner that we try to contain and mitigate this virus, the more we're going to see as far as less cases and sooner we can kind of contain and stop the spread. So this is very important. We need to make sure that we're doing everything that's being told to us by the officials as far as large gathering bans. It's the right thing to do. Keeping social distancing, that's the right thing to do. We all have to do our part, and we all have to make sure that we listen to the people who are passing out these recommendations and rules.
Dr. Misra, knowing that several school districts in your area have closed, how soon do you think it's going to be before we stop seeing these numbers drop? Every day we come to you live and the numbers keep going up. How soon should we expect to see that reverse?
Are you referring to the number of coronavirus cases?
Yes.
It's very hard to tell because we haven't hit the peak yet. And like everyone's been talking about, there's a peak that a virus will hit during an outbreak. And what we're trying to do is to have that not happen. And we're trying to blunt that effect. And we're trying to make it a hump. We're trying to flatten the curve. Because if we don't do anything about it, that peak is going to happen. But we have taken measures already in hopes that we can blunt that effect. One, as Dr. Fauci mentioned earlier, and we're aware of, is limiting people that were coming in from the first known country, which is China. And then rightfully, but it was a very difficult decision to make, we did the ban on Europe, which is now turned into the new China. The second thing we have to do is work internally and contain, the spread of the virus. And the only way we can do that is self-quarantine when we know that we're sick, and then social distancing in the meantime, and limiting unnecessary engagements unless we really need to. So I'm not sure when we're going to see the numbers drop, because right now we're on the slope going up, but we're hoping that we don't hit the peak. And I believe from everything that we're doing so far, we're doing everything the right way now. We're getting tests out, we're going to test more people, and we are going to blunt this peak so that we're not as hard hit as Italy. And that's the hope, that's my hope, and that's the hope of all the physicians and pretty much everyone out here in America.
100%. All right, Dr. Misra, we're going to put you on a quick pause. I know that we're lucky enough to have you for a little bit today, so we're going to come back to you throughout. We also have a number of viewer questions I'll be asking directly to Dr. Misra. We do welcome you, and we thank you for joining us as we are again aiming to bring you the newest information we can get on the coronavirus. We're examining the impact it's having on people's health. We're also examining what's happening at big box stores and grocery stores all across the country. So for that, I'd like to bring in KTVU Fox 2's Alyssa Harrington. Alyssa, you are in the San Francisco Bay Area. Looks like you're at a Costco. And from what you've said, you saw lines out the door even before those doors were open?
That's right. I'm here at the Costco in Concord, which is in the East Bay. When we arrived this morning, lines wrapped around the building. There were hundreds of people in line before the store even opened. Some people had been waiting for hours. Now, one man described the inside of Costco as a madhouse. What they are doing today is they are actually limiting what people can buy. One package of toilet paper, one package of paper towel, one package of bottled water. Lysol wipes are sold out. Some people were upset when they found out about these limits. I got a chance to actually speak with a Costco employee, and he told me he has never seen crowds like this, even around the holidays. This is something they have never seen. He said within a matter of minutes, there were probably 1,000 people inside the building. So what you're looking at now are these shoppers coming out. Almost every single one of them does have toilet paper, so it looks like they do still have some in stock. But employees said they had to take these measures because people were filling up entire carts with just one item, and they want to make sure there's enough for everyone. Another thing we have been seeing are shoppers wearing masks, wearing gloves, people trying to protect themselves while they go out shopping and go into these crowds. Now, before we got here to Costco, we also got a chance to stop by a Safeway in Walnut Creek. When we were there, there were certain aisles that were really lacking supplies. The pasta sauce, almost entirely out. I couldn't find any children's cold medicine. Certain cleaning supplies entirely sold out as well. One shopper there asked the checker if she could buy the hand sanitizer at the front counter, the one that's pretty much attached to the counter that anybody can use. She asked if she could buy it from them. Another shopper here told me that he was at a Trader Joe's where people were using the wipes that you wipe down your shopping carts with, and people were coming by and just taking as many as they could and walking away. So that is what is happening around here. People certainly very concerned, people doing what's been called panic buying, and that's what we're seeing here at Costco. Although I will say that some shoppers I talked to told me that now that they have placed these limits here, it is much more orderly than it has been inside. Reporting live in Concord, Alyssa Harrington, back to you.
Alyssa, so we honest to goodness almost ran out of toilet paper the other night at our house. Not to get too personal, but I went to my local Target. The toilet paper aisles were empty. I found a worker and I said, "Do you have any in the back?" And he said yes. And I said, "Just bring me one. Just bring me one package." And I think that is the message from retailers saying, you only need one right now. And if I took 3 or 4, then that would have left fewer for the people who come after me. Is that sort of a sentiment that shoppers who aren't panic buying hope continues to spread across the country?
Right. Yes, absolutely. And some people I talk to are parents who have, 3 or 4 kids, and they say, we really need toilet paper at our house. And when people are taking all of it, it doesn't make sense to a lot of people. So I think that's why, you're seeing other people buy so much of one item and you feel like you have to get it too, or else you're not going to be able to get it in the future. And I think that's what's really led to this panic buying. It's really this snowball effect.
All right. All right, Alyssa Harrington there. I know since you're in front of a Costco, a lot of people like to go and just graze all throughout the warehouse and kind of make a meal of their shopping trip. I understand Costco isn't doing those free samples anymore.
They're not doing the free samples anymore, and shoppers I talked to told me that really when you get inside, it is a mad dash to find those items: the toilet paper, the paper towels, cleaning products, and water.
All right, KTVU Fox 2's Alyssa Harrington live for us in the San Francisco Bay Area in the East Bay town of Concord. Thank you again to Alyssa and to you for joining us, as again we're working to bring you the latest information to help sort of digest what you may be seeing in your community, whether it's panic buying or people concerned about their health or their jobs, everything and anything in between. Let's go now to Los Angeles, to the area of LA, because something unprecedented is about to happen there at Disneyland. I'd like to bring in Rick Lozano. For the 4th time in history here, Disneyland is closing its doors. Today's the last day it's open.
It is indeed going to be closing its doors. And you're absolutely correct. When you think of Disneyland, you think of a venue that rarely closes. That's going to change in a big way starting tomorrow. Today it's cloudy and rainy here in Southern California. So Disneyland goers for today are going to have to make the best of their experience, because starting tomorrow the park is going to close, and it'll be closed for the rest of the month. Let's take a look at the background here. In the distance you can see that folks are making their way to the Magic Kingdom. It's their last opportunity before the park closes, and this is as of yesterday, when Disney officials said that there had been no outbreak of the coronavirus or no reported cases of the virus at the park, but it's going to close the park anyway through the request of Governor Newsom, and in the best interest of their guests and their employees. Although downtown Disney, which is an area of shops and restaurants just outside the park, that is going to remain open. The resort hotels, they too will stay open until Monday, and that is to give guests time to make travel arrangements. So far, guests seem to be okay with the closure, given the times that we are in with the coronavirus outbreak. Disneyland Resort says it'll help guests who wish to change or cancel their visits, and the resort will refund guests who have hotel bookings during the closure. As for employees of the park, they make their living here, they rely on their paychecks. Well, good news for them. Disneyland, Disney says that those employees will continue to be paid. So good news there. Also, other local parks have all jumped on board and say they will be closing as well. Nearby, Knott's Berry Farm will be closing as of tomorrow. Six Flags Magic Mountain also will be closed, as will Universal Studios Hollywood. All those local parks will be closed until the end of the month as of tomorrow. So it is a big deal. A lot of these people have spent so much money getting here, planning their visits, spending thousands and thousands of dollars only to have it come to this. Many are understanding, but many are also angry about the money invested and money they're going to be losing.
Rick, I'm curious if you've had a chance to talk to anybody who works where you are. Those hotels that tend to be a little bit less expensive than staying in the park itself. I'm thinking about those hotels and restaurants outside of Disneyland that very much rely on those Disney visitors to fill their rooms, to order their meals, to swim in their swimming pools. I mean, Disneyland is sort of the epicenter, if you will, but that dampening effect must reach far and wide.
Well, that's a very good point. We have not had an opportunity to speak to any of the businesses around here because it's still relatively early. Of course, we've been on the air since early this morning. So those businesses are just beginning to open, just beginning to ramp up for the day. But you're absolutely right in that as Disneyland goes, so goes many of these businesses insofar as hotel stays, restaurants that depend on people coming in to buy food, and other businesses of the type who rely on Disneyland. It's as though Disneyland is the axle and all these other businesses are the spokes to that wheel.
All right. I think only the 4th time in history, correct me if I'm wrong, Disneyland shut down after the John F. Kennedy Jr. assassination, September 11th. Was it the Northridge earthquake? And now this is the 4th time. Does that sound about right to
we often hear that Disneyland doesn't even shut down in the most major of storms, and we've had quite a major thunderstorm or a rain system move through this area in the last 24 hours. But through all that, Disneyland will remain open, except for tomorrow and the rest of the month.
All right, Rick Lozano reporting live just outside of Disneyland there with the major news that Disney is closing its parks as of tomorrow. Rick Lozano, thank you. It's always interesting to get a Southern California perspective on something that affects people who live and work there, but certainly people come from all over the country and the world to go to Disneyland. All right, let's talk about what's happening with your money. If you've checked stocks lately, you might feel a little bit better in your stomach than you did this time yesterday, because take a look at this. Dow Jones is up almost 4 full percentage points. Nice to see the index adding some 830 plus points. Still, we're right above that 22,000 mark. The S&P is up by 3.5%. NASDAQ is almost there as well. This, of course, follows huge drops we saw on Wall Street just yesterday. We saw drops we hadn't seen in, 30 plus years or so. So it's nice to see these numbers, at least for now. We'll have to see if they hold as the markets are open for another couple of hours. Let's talk about what's happening with your money. Should you open the envelope, or I guess these days, James McBride, you're a financial analyst in the San Francisco Bay Area. They used to say, don't open the envelope that your statement comes in. These days, I can access this information at my fingertips. Do you tell your clients to look at the numbers or to turn away?
I tell them to do exactly what you're doing, is just don't look. This has been a terribly unsettling event. We've seen the stock market go from all-time highs in the middle of February to a bear market in just 19 days. And there's really no way to prepare for that. It is what it is. The market will find a bottom. We don't know when, we don't know how. But I think you're going to feel real bad if you look at your numbers, because it's been a very trying time.
I imagine if I had a stack of cash sitting around, you would tell me to buy right now.
You betcha.
Okay.
And in fact, one of the smartest investors I know is my little brother. He lives in Virginia. He called me yesterday and he says, time to get back in. Yeah. So there you go. Okay,
so for those of us who don't have a stack of cash sitting around, what do you tell your clients to do? Because even though I've heard the advice to do nothing, it doesn't feel like, that doesn't make me feel better.
Well, most investors are probably just like you, Gasia. They have their retirement investments in a 401k, so you are doing something. When you make your monthly contributions, you're buying into your existing positions. And the good news is that you're using your dividend reinvestments, you're using the cash that you've just invested, and you're actually buying into the market at a lower point. It's called dollar cost averaging. So you are doing something, and in fact, you're doing exactly the right thing. And I think most of the folks that are watching have most of their retirement funds in a 401k. So you are doing something, and you are doing the right thing.
Let's talk about silver linings here. Our morning meteorologist said that he is refinancing his home and he could not be happier with the interest rate he's getting. Is that something we should all be looking into if we're homeowners?
Well, you're right. That is a terrific silver lining. Mortgages are based on the 10-year Treasury, which is at an all-time low, as are auto loans. And if you think about it, the biggest purchase that most of us make in our life are our cars and our home. So you are getting tremendous mortgage rate deals today. When I bought my home a little over 40 years ago, I was happy to get a mortgage rate that was less than 10%, 9 7/8. Now we're around 3%. So yes, it is a terrific time to buy a house, buy a car.
Now, I know that we're all waiting to hear what the president has to say here in about an hour and a half. Could rates get any lower?
Well, they could. In fact, you have in Europe, you have this strange phenomena of negative interest rates. So yeah, there's a lot of prognosticators that are saying that interest rates will go to zero.
Wait, what is a negative interest rate? Is that when they pay me to borrow money? How does that work?
Yeah, it's so crazy that I'm not sure I understand it. Okay. But yeah, you put the money in and you get less back at the end of the term. Now, how crazy is that? But yeah, but to answer your question, yeah, interest rates can go to zero. And point of fact, back in Europe, they can go below zero.
That is incredible. All right, James McBride advising us to sit on our hands, don't look, but we do appreciate your bringing your expertise. I know we'll come back to you throughout our live coverage here this morning and afternoon as well. Let's talk more about what's happening with you. We've talked about your finances a minute ago. Now let's talk about your health. I'm happy to be able to welcome Dr. Stephen Papuchis, Doctor of Osteopathic Medicine at the Virginia Spine Institute, here to our live coverage. Let's talk about immunity and staying healthy. A lot of people certainly want to stay away from coronavirus, but we really should be protecting our overall health, especially now, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. I think right now just highlights how critical it is to look at your health from a wide variety of perspectives to try to protect yourself and build your immunity and keep up your resiliency.
And how do you advise people do that, aside from the hand washing and social distancing we've all heard about?
So I think the first thing you want to do is get a good foundation from a nutritional aspect. That means eating a wide variety of different foods, fresh fruits and vegetables, whole foods, lean proteins. So we like to say eat the rainbow. So have a plate with lots of different colors on it so it represents different nutrients that your body needs. About 70% of your immunity resides in your gut. So the same nutrients that you need to fuel your entire body, you need to fuel your gut as well. So eat apples and bananas, broccoli. And as you're preparing for potential quarantine, think about getting frozen fruits and frozen vegetables as well, because those will last much longer and you don't lose really any nutritional value with those sources of food.
All right, doctor, let's talk about some of the viewer questions we've been getting. As I'm sure you can imagine, people want to know how coronavirus might impact their health. We have a viewer who asks, if you catch COVID-19 or coronavirus once, are you immune to it, or can you get reinfected?
So I think it is entirely reasonable to worry about kind of what's your risk after you get coronavirus. It is a novel virus, which means many of us in the United States don't have an innate immunity to it. So once you get exposed to a virus or any disease, your body builds immunity to that. But in some cases, you may be susceptible to reinfection. And those people we think are people who have compromised immune systems, so people who have cancer or people who have other chronic disease states. So the best thing you can do is eat a lot of healthy foods, get a lot of sleep so your body can restore and allow your immune system to be at peak fighting shape to fight off any new diseases or recurrent diseases you may be facing.
Certainly important, especially for those among us who are most vulnerable. We've talked a lot about how older people seem to be more affected by the coronavirus. We have a viewer who's asking a question about their little ones. The question is from our viewer, why do children seem to be more immune to the coronavirus?
Well, we don't have all of the information about the coronavirus, but it is unique that our younger children, infants, seem to be more resilient or not able to contract the virus. And the thought may be that there's something unique about older and more developed lungs, that maybe there's a protein or a structure within the lung tissue that has a receptor for the virus that younger individuals may have. So while we don't have all the information, that is definitely one theory that's being floated in the medical community about why younger children may be a little bit more resilient to getting this virus.
But can little children still be carriers? And I've even heard them referred to as super carriers. Is that the case or no?
I believe that definitely is a possibility. Kids can get the virus and they may not have a lot of symptoms, and that's the problem. We don't have enough information. We don't have enough data points yet in the United States because we lack the appropriate testing kits, and there are a lot of people who may be walking around who are completely asymptomatic, but the virus is active and in their bodies. So that's why it's really important with this concept of social distancing. If you have family members who are older, who have underlying lung diseases, it's really important to just really take smart steps, be super cautious, and maybe try to avoid getting in contact with them if you feel like they may be susceptible to contracting the disease.
So, doctor, last night I'm lucky enough to have my little sister live 10 minutes away from me. She has the most beautiful 9-month-old baby boy. I hug and kiss him regularly, but last night when I went to go visit, I only kissed him on the very back of his head because he's so little. He's had very few of his shots. Our children, and this goes to one of our viewer questions actually, who writes, and I'd like to know as well, should we be worried about perhaps a newborn baby being exposed because their immune system isn't fully developed? And certainly little ones don't have the same vaccinations adults like you and I have.
I think that's a very good question. And I think right now, because we simply don't have enough information about the virus, there's so much that we don't know, that I think taking all the reasonable precautions is definitely necessary. So that means newborn babies whose immune systems aren't quite built up, they're in the middle of getting all their vaccines to help build their immune system. I think it's very reasonable to say, you have a very cute child, you want to hug them, hold them, you want to nurture them, but maybe for the foreseeable future, until we get more data, that we need to just be careful, stay away. Little air patty cake or waves or cute things like that will be good, but for now, if you feel like you're sick or you feel like you've been exposed to people who've had the virus, just be safe, wash your hands, and keep that appropriate social distance.
Okay, so I know that we are coming out of the traditional cold and flu season, and the newsroom where I'm lucky enough to work, you see vitamin C powders, you see orange juice on everyone's desk, typically this time of year, which feeds into our next viewer question. Our viewer asks, is there anything you can do to boost your immunity to COVID-19?
So I don't know of anything specifically that we can do targeting COVID-19 to boost our immune system. So that means we need to rely on the usual things that we do to boost our immune system. As I already touched on, adequate nutrition, getting lots of different nutrients from lots of different healthy food sources, getting adequate sleep. Recommendations are you need to get 7 to 9 hours of consistent sleep throughout the night so your body can be fully restored, your organ systems can be fully rejuvenated, and your immune system can be 100% functional. Getting routine exercise. This makes your body and your tissues much more resilient, gets you more healthy. So if you do get sick and you do start experiencing symptoms, you can recover from them at a better rate. And then avoiding the things that everyone knows that can be bad for you. Drinking alcohol, for instance, to excess, smoking, and having your lungs be exposed to nicotine and all these other products. It impairs your ability to get oxygen to your tissues and impairs your ability for your lungs to clean out all the gunk that can build up, giving it more of a risk factor of getting the disease in your lungs and getting different types of pathogens, not just COVID-19. So those are just some very simple tricks that you can do to help boost your immune system and keep you healthy, not just now, but all year round.
And one more quick viewer question, Dr. Papuchis. Our viewer writes with the question, if you got a flu shot, does that offer you any immunity to the coronavirus? Does that help at all?
No, unfortunately, all of our vaccines are specifically targeted to specific pathogens. So for the flu, that is specifically targeting the influenza virus, and there may be some crossover for different strains of flu because the vaccine is only really produced for what is predicted to be the most common strains of flu. But in this case, it doesn't provide any innate immunity to the coronavirus that we know of. However, what it does do is if you do have the flu, it may protect you from getting more severe symptoms of the flu, and because you've had the flu, your lungs may be damaged for a short period of time, making you more susceptible to getting coronavirus and getting the symptoms that are more severe to coronavirus. So again, if you feel sick, talk to your doctor. Potentially go to the emergency room if your symptoms are severe and get adequate medical care and advice.
Okay, and wash those hands and socially distance yourself. Well, Dr. Stephen Papuchis, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate your answering our viewers' questions, and we're going to do more of that as the days go on. Let's talk about what's happening on the entertainment world. I know we just took you live to Disneyland, where the park is going to close after today. That is somewhat unprecedented. There's also a lot happening in the movies you might see or the concerts you may not be going to after all because of the coronavirus. I would like to bring in now Renee Bard. You are an extra in Los Angeles, the heart of Hollywood, if you will. A lot of people thought once they found out Tom Hanks and his wife Rita have coronavirus, a lot of people were joking on Twitter, but it's serious. They're like, okay, now this means something to me. Tom Hanks is one of a number of celebrities affected.
Yeah, I mean, he's a national treasure. If Tom Hanks can get it, no one is immune, like that's the crazy part of it all. And I think that's why people are freaking out. So far, there have been a couple of athletes, celebrity athletes. Heidi Klum has now said that she has chills and she basically had all the symptoms of a cold and has been staying home, but she hasn't been able to get a test for the coronavirus, which is crazy, but there's just not enough tests. So she's just staying home and not going into AGT and not working, trying to stay away from people. But so far, they're the ones that we've heard about that have it.
And this is happening worldwide as well. I know there's an impact on The Voice in Australia.
So far, not necessarily not The Voice in Australia, but Channel 9 in Australia, because there was Rita Wilson made an appearance on a show there. Right. All of their talent, the people that were working on the show that day, have had to go into isolation just to take preventative measures, but nobody's shown any symptoms yet or anything like that. But definitely here, definitely in the US, the entertainment industry has been shutting down. Show by shows just start being not cancelled, but put on hold for a while. Talk shows like Kelly Clarkson, Wendy Williams, Fallon, Colbert, they've all stopped production for now. I know Reese Witherspoon and Jen Aniston, their show, The Morning Show, is taking a hiatus for the next couple of weeks, so that they're not going to be on the lot. Reality shows like Survivor, which makes sense. I think they were all supposed to fly to Fiji at the end of the month, so they won't be shooting. AGT. And then there's lots of scripted shows as well. I know Universal's halted production on 35 shows, including all of the Chicago series. So yeah, I mean, Hollywood's definitely taking a big hit.
And so, Renee, you're talking to us from the extra newsroom there. I can't help but notice it looks awfully quiet behind you. Are there any measures?
Oh, wow, you are right.
So is this because of coronavirus measures being taken, or did I just happen to catch you on everyone else's lunch break?
No, I think actually that's a very good question. I only just realized that. I do know that people that can work from home are being encouraged to work from home, and obviously production, we're still going ahead and being very cautious, but I think everywhere feels really quiet. Even driving into work, it felt really quiet. We've just heard that the schools have closed. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting. We'll have to wait and see how this is all going to progress, and how much we can actually keep continuing to do to keep these shows going, since so many are shutting down production.
And finally, people might say, look, it's entertainment, right? It's the cherry on top of the sundae. Why do we need it? But especially when you are being told, to stay with your own family, not go outside. So a lot of people do turn to entertainment to help them feel better in times like this.
For sure, and I mean, you even think about sports. Nobody can watch sports if there's no games happening, and it's crazy to think that the NBA season might be over. But Netflix right now, I'm sure they're doing okay.
Yeah,
that's what, if everyone's staying home, that's what they're watching.
They're doing more than okay, I think. All right, Renee, thank you so much for joining us there from the extra newsroom. I did see someone walk by in the background as we were talking.
Okay, so. Yes, we are still here. We're still operating.
Right,
don't worry.
You're not alone. Thank you so much, Renee Barge, for joining us. I want to mention a quick piece of news that just crossed the wires here as Renee and I were talking about the impact on the entertainment industry. This comes from Washington, D.C. Officials are now saying that visits to inmates at all 122 federal prisons are going to be put on a stop for 30 days, and that is in response to the coronavirus pandemic. So again, this is news for visits to inmates at all 122 federal prisons are now on hold for 30 days, and this comes as a response to what's happening nationally with the coronavirus outbreak. Keep that in mind. If this affects you, we will try to get more information on that. So again, we do thank you for joining us on a day like today. We've been doing this for a couple of weeks now. We come to you to bring you the newest information that we have, such as that piece of news from Washington, D.C. We also work to answer your questions, as we just did with the doctor. And we also want to talk about the best practices for protecting yourself, your family, and those you love most. So let's talk about hand washing, if you haven't heard too much of it already. We do welcome Dr. Lily Talakoob. You're a dermatologist based in Virginia. People sort of roll their eyes when I tell them hand washing is the best thing you can do. Maybe it'll mean more coming from a doctor.
Absolutely. Hand washing is the most important. It's better than hand sanitizers. Using a lathering soap, getting all around your hands, under your nails, everywhere, even up on your arms. It's the most important thing you can do to protect yourself and your family.
So everyone has one of these. It's a little bottle of hand sanitizer on their desks in my newsroom. Tell me why hand washing is better than the sanitizer.
Hand sanitizers only protect against a certain number of germs. The most important thing is it has to have at least 60% alcohol. And a lot of hand sanitizers don't have that 60% alcohol. The lather in the soaps is very important. It takes the germs on your hands and rinses them off. And it gets everywhere around the hands. And so the germs cannot proliferate when they're rinsed off. But the hand sanitizers usually can't get everywhere, and they can't get everything.
Is there an oily component to the coronavirus? I've heard that the lathering action and formula of soap helps break down some sort of an oily barrier in the virus?
Sure. The outer barrier of germs can have an oil, and that lather causes an emulsion, and the emulsion takes it and has it roll off your hands into the lather and into the water.
So something else I'm using, I do hand washing. I'm lucky enough to work mostly inside. This little bottle of hand lotion has been refilled since, I stole it from a hotel maybe, 7 years ago. It's going strong, but my hands are so dry because of the hand washing. If our skin is cracked and that barrier is compromised, does that leave me more susceptible to coronavirus or anything?
Absolutely. Just like the lather peels off the oil and the bacteria from your hands, it also peels off the natural oils. So if you don't moisturize, you're going to get cracks in your hands. And if you get cracks, you're actually more susceptible to viruses. So you have to re-moisturize after every washing, or else those cracks are going to lead to bacteria getting into that barrier.
A lot of people say, ever since I heard the advice not to touch my face, all I do is think about touching my face and touch my face.
It's a natural response, yeah.
So how do you do like the rubber band on the wrist? I think there's some app out there that monitors where your wrist is in relation to your face, and it beeps when it's too close. Like, how do we do something? It's like if I said, don't think about pink elephants. I know what you're thinking about now.
Of course, yeah. You know, the most important is washing your hands when you do touch your face. So getting something, to help you remind you to take your hands off your face, but really washing your hands before you take your contacts out. Touching your nose and touching your mouth, those mucosal layers, and that actually has less of a barrier than your skin. Your skin is 100 times thicker than the surface on your eyes, your nose, and your mouth. So the germs get in those areas first. I see a lot of people touching their contacts in their eyes without washing their hands. That's actually a high area of germ infiltration. So using hand washing techniques before touching your eyes, taking your contacts out, or eating, those are really important ways to protect yourself.
So I have two little boys, and as most parents would tell you, I always say, same ingredients, different cake. My older son is just methodical and has always been about hand washing. My little one, not so much. However, I saw him at the sink the other day, scrubbing his fingernails against the palm of one hand and then switching and doing the other. They actually had a school-wide assembly talking about hand washing, and so I am impressed.
Amazing. That's amazing. That should have been done years ago when flu was out and colds and in cold season. My kids as well, when they go into every single room, the teachers make them wash the hands before they go in the room. Those are practices we should be doing on a day-to-day basis for everything.
I know that something I started doing as soon as I had babies was I cut my nails very short, and they've been that way because I thought, I don't want to transfer germs to my beautiful, perfect little newborn's mouth.
Yeah.
For women or for anyone who loves a lovely manicure and who might have long nails, do those trap more things, and could coronavirus be there? Or could in any way the act of getting a professional manicure leave you more open to coronavirus?
So getting a manicure can make you more prone. Any cuts or nicks around the nail are openings for germs to get in. But this is a public service announcement to anybody out there that has long nails. It is best to cut the nails and no acrylic or false nails on your nails, because actually bacteria can get trapped between the nail and the acrylic, and it can cause the infection to spread. So cut your nails very short. You should not be able to see your nails when you put your hands up like this. So no nails should be seen from the back side of your hands, and take off any false nails because everything can get trapped under there.
Okay, so since we're talking about, beauty-related things, I probably use, the same tube of mascara for far too long, and I'm dipping into the same thing of face powder from who knows how many months. Can germs, or specifically coronavirus, live on something like a powder brush or a mascara
Absolutely.
wand? Oh, wow, okay.
Absolutely. So every single makeup product has an expiration, so you have to throw it away before the expiration. It's on the bottle. It'll say like 18 months and then a picture of an open bottle.
Right.
But at this time, during this pandemic, no makeup should be shared or no brushes should be shared. So I would avoid using anything and on any counter that other people have used on their skin. It's very important because brushes cannot be adequately cleaned. And if you don't clean the brushes adequately, the germs can live on that surface for multiple hours.
You have shamed me into going through my makeup kit as soon as I'm done for the day, and I swear I'll throw out what's expired. But before we let you go real quick, is there anything else you'd like to mention on this subject, Doctor?
No, this is a time that we should all be aware of what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, not just washing our hands, but protecting our skin, protecting our scalp, protecting our eyes. Any surface is a potential area of danger. So cleansing it and keeping your hands off of things are the most important thing you can do.
All right, Dr. Lily Talakoub, thank you so much for joining us with some good advice.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, of course. We'll keep talking about this as I know more and more people are writing to us with their questions. Let's see if we can help you stay healthy, and by bringing in again Dr. Ranjan Misra, an internal medicine specialist based in the San Francisco Bay Area. Doctor, I know you were listening to Dr. Talakoub. Is there anything you haven't had a chance to say or you think is emerging now that you'd like to start by addressing?
So I'm going to use this space to say the same thing again, and I'll tell you why. In Taiwan, and one of my friends is from Taiwan, so she's kind of keeping me up to date on what they're using, what's working, and what we can also use. So thanks to her. But the one thing that they're doing on all channels and all stations nationwide is having public service announcements, and they're saying the same three things again and again. So I'm going to use this little time that you're giving me to say the same thing, because I think the more you hear, the more people you hear. Maybe someone hasn't heard this. So I'm going to say these three things. Number one, please wash your hands. There's just not enough times that you can wash your hands. And if you can't find soap and water, then find some hand sanitizer with at least 60% alcohol to clean your hands. And number two, try not to touch your face. The reason everyone is talking about this is because, like the physician before me said, your eyes, your nose, and also your mouth, they have mucosal basically layers, and you can have direct transmission of the virus. So I know this is the most innate thing that we do is inadvertently just keep touching our face, but try not to touch your face. Adding on to that, a lot of people who do not need to be wearing masks are wearing masks. Remember one thing, it can give you a false sense of security when you have a mask on. And when you don't take it off in the proper way, you can actually be putting unnecessary bacteria into those areas we've just talked about, your nose and your mouth, because that's what the mask covers. So it can actually backfire, and you're trying to protect yourself, but you can actually introduce bacteria if you don't know the correct way of taking it off. So if you're not sick or you're not taking care of a sick person, please don't use the mask. That's the guidelines right now. And in doing so, you're actually going to be helping your fellow people, because healthcare workers, hospital workers, they need the masks. And if we take it away from them, you know, that's not doing the right social obligation that we really need to put out there.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and then number three thing, you know, that I was going to mention really quickly, if you're sick, please stay in. You have an obligation to everyone around you to make sure that you're taking the precautions that you need to do.
Let me ask you this, and this is total devil's advocate, and this is sort of a question that I'm hearing from a lot of people as we are taking viewer questions. This is one I've heard from many of my friends and other people I come in contact to. They say this: we are reacting to the coronavirus as if it is a death sentence, and for some people it has been. However, for the majority of the population, it does seem that if you are healthy, if you are not elderly, and if you have no underlying health situations going on, you can have coronavirus, get treated, and be okay afterward. So some people see all this talk about it as an overreaction. How concerned should we be about once we have it? How bad is it?
That's a good question. So number one, I don't think it's an overreaction, and the numbers very soon, once we start testing people, are going to show exactly that. This is not an overreaction. We're trying very hard to be prepared for what's coming. So be very mindful that it is coming. It's not a matter of when, but we are going to see a sudden surge in the number of cases and the number of people that are positive, just because we're going to have the means to be able to test them. Number two, we need to understand that there are things that we can do to prevent this from happening. We don't know, how many people are going to be affected, and it is true that the majority of the people who will be affected will have a very mild disease. That's something positive that we can take home today. But at the same time, there will be people and there will be outliers that might be young and may be severely affected by the disease. So it's not something that we can brush off. Yes, the good news is most people are going to have a mild form of the disease. Fantastic. But what we have to prepare for are the people who are going to have a moderately severe or a critical form of the disease that are going to need hospitalization. And we need to understand one more thing that I don't think a lot of people are aware of. When these people do get hospitalized, it's not a 1 or a 2-day admission. It could be a 2-week admission. If you're very old, you have underlying medical issues, it could be several weeks, maybe a month, maybe a couple months. And when those beds are not available for other acutely sick people who are now new cases coming in, that's when we're going to run into problems. So no, this is not an overreaction. We must absolutely not think that. Dr.
Misra, I was picking up dinner for my little sister and her husband the other day, and I I don't go to restaurants a lot, but they asked me to, and so I did. And a lot of us who were waiting for our meals were sort of joking, like, oh, I guess I should socially distance myself from you, or, you know, we were sort of joking, and there was an uneasiness about, should we all be here? Should we all be, you know, taking hot peppers from the same container? How do you address those public situations that some people can't stop doing, right? That for them, it's not elective. They have to go and get dinner because they don't have the facility or the time or the ability to cook, let's just say.
Sure. You know, continue to do so. I think continuing to do so will even help our economy. Yeah. We can't just shut down and never leave the house. However, when we do that, we need to be very mindful. And what you were joking about, I hope that becomes a practice and we don't no longer joke about it, we actually implement it. So when you are going to pick up something at a restaurant, or you are, you know, say at McDonald's or Burger King's or something like that, you are keeping your distance. That social distancing is going to help us. Whether you think that's right or wrong, I'm here to tell you that it is going to help us. It's going to make a big difference in the way that we can decrease the spread of this virus. Because what we do know is if you keep a distance of 6 feet or more, you're less likely to get those droplets on you. And that's a very, you know, it's a very basic thing that we can do. So I think it's time now that this uneasiness we're all having, that we turn into something practical, and we turn it into something that we're actively doing.
I will say, I've noticed a change in just the past few days. We've been getting this information for at least a couple weeks now, but I feel like sort of by the beginning or middle of this week, we are now finally talking about what we've all been thinking about. So it's, I guess if that's a positive, then let's take it as such. I would like to run through some more viewer questions if you have time. Good, let's do it. All right, a number of questions, and if you, to the person who's viewing this, is watching it on a live stream or your local Fox Television news station, send us a question and I will pop it up either to Dr. Misra or another one of our many, many experts. So we will start with a question I think everyone has. Dr. Misra, our viewer asks, can I get the coronavirus from food? What do you say to this KTVU Fox 2 viewer in the Bay Area?
So the information that we have about coronavirus is evolving on an hourly, on a daily basis. So there's no, you know, right or wrong answer for this right now, but there's no way, we don't have any facts right now that food itself is going to be carrying or is going to be a vector for this virus. So that I don't cause more panic and hysteria, the answer, you know, right now is no, but you should be still using very, very strict hand hygiene and cleanliness measures when you're cooking food. This applies to us at home. This applies to restaurants, obviously. And if we can all maintain those hygiene, very strict hygiene measures, then we can decrease, you know, utensils getting in contact with the food, etc. But as of right now, there's no evidence that actual food can be transmitting the virus.
Okay, good. So the burger I picked up for my sister and her husband last night should be okay. All right, to our next viewer question. Someone else writes with this: how do local governments plan to keep the virus under control?
That's going to be based on how frequent their cases are, because you can see in California, Governor Newsom is creating pretty strict measures, and it's a fantastic thing that he's doing, to be honest. And like Dr. Fauci said earlier on today, based on how the cases are showing up, whether they're cluster cases, there's a lot of cases, just 1 or 2 cases, each local government is going to have to respond in that way. We can't all respond in the same way. For example, the way that things are happening in Washington, the way that things are happening in California, you may not necessarily need that for a state that just has 1 case, but you should start preparing. So it's going to be a very local response based on the local happenings in that particular state.
Okay, and I'll put you on a quick pause here because I have more viewer questions to get to. I know you're talking to us from the San Francisco Bay Area. I just got news that the Oakland Unified School District, a major school district in your area, is closed, and I believe that starts on Monday. So we'll have more on that breaking news throughout this broadcast, if you will. Back to our viewer questions, and I've heard this one an awful lot. Our viewer writes and asks, Anthony wants to know, does coronavirus remain on money?
Very good question. And if we had the answer to that definitively, I wonder what would happen. Would people stop using money? We know already that other coronaviruses and other viruses do tend to stay on surfaces, inanimate objects. So we're hypothesizing right now that this particular novel coronavirus can do the same thing. it is a hypothesis. There are tests that are actively being done, but we don't have a definitive answer. So the hypothetical answer would be yes, it can, but you know, I'm not aware if our viewers who are listening in are aware of this, but whenever you do handle money, you are transmitting, you know, germs. This is before all this happened, before coronavirus started. So I would always tell my patients, and I would always urge my family members, whenever you're handling money or handling things that are being passed around from one person to another at high frequency, you should always be disinfecting. And that's something that's just a normal, regular hygiene practice that should stay with us even after this pandemic has quietened down.
Let's talk about testing and the availability of test kits. I know a lot of doctors say the shortage of test kits early on is what has led to, or at least in part led to, this increase, this hill climbing that we're seeing. So with that, I turn to a question from one of our viewers who writes, what does it mean that there is a shortage of RNA extraction kits for testing?
RNA extraction kit is basically another name for testing for this novel coronavirus. But I want to kind of flip that question and answer what's happening right now, because I think people need to know what's happening now and not what's been happening. That's the past. We can't change that. But what we are doing, and this, you know, was released last night. This news was released last night. The private sector is now getting involved in getting these kits out there, in getting testing out there, and this is very good news, because I'm hoping that as early as in a week, you know, maximum 2 weeks, we're seeing a huge ramp up of getting testing available to a lot more people. And the criteria for testing is going to become less stringent just by the mere fact that we're going to have testing widely available. Also, the good news is that some of these tests are going to be 10 times as fast as the tests that exist already. So usually right now a test takes about 24 hours. We're hoping that these new tests, some of them are going to be as fast as 1 hour, which is going to be fantastic.
Let's talk about the changing weather. Thank goodness things are starting to get a little bit warmer in many parts of the country. A lot of people say that's when the traditional cold and flu season starts to end. Leads straight into this next viewer question. Our viewer writes, will the warm weather help stop the outbreak of COVID-19?
I wish I could say yes, but there are studies being done in China, there are studies being done here in America, and the results are very inconclusive. We were hoping that, like the cold and flu, everything just kind of dies down. Unfortunately, what we are seeing is that this virus is showing signs of persisting beyond temperature gradients. And we just don't have enough information right now, because it's evolving and because we're actively doing experiments to try and figure out, is there an optimal temperature for this virus? Does it fare better in colder temperatures? Does it disintegrate in warmer temperatures? And I wish I had something definitive to tell you, but unfortunately, because we don't have enough data, that's not something I can say for sure.
Is there anything, you know, I look at that national map, and Director Jeff, if we have it, if we can pop it up while still keeping the doctor on this line. I look at this map and I see that Washington State has the most confirmed number of coronavirus cases. I see that New York is also heavily affected. California is also heavily affected. Essentially, you're seeing big states with very large metropolitan centers on either coast of the United States most affected. You only have 3 states nationwide that have 0 cases right now. Do you expect to see those numbers sort of close in and affect the very central part of the country, or just stay in those major metro areas and large states?
Very good question, and I wish I had a definitive answer for this, but what I can tell you from what we understand already about the virus is that there is community spread happening. I don't think that we should take this lightly. I think sooner than later, all states are going to be affected. It's just a matter of time. Just because we're having external states majorly affected right now doesn't mean that this is going to stay the pattern. I think as we move on into the next few days and weeks, we're going to see with the amplified testing that's going to be available that there are going to be a lot more people, a lot more cases that's going to be present throughout our nation, and we have to be ready for that.
Okay, well, I appreciate your advice, your information. I give you the elbow bump and thanks. I know we're going to talk to you more as our coverage continues here. We are coming up on the top of the hour. It's coming up on 11 a.m. Pacific time. Some of our viewers may be stepping away for a moment to some other programming now. We will continue online with your local Fox station's website and social media platforms as we still do work to bring you the very latest on the coronavirus pandemic.
it actually tested and true? How do you make sure that the things, these technologies you're seeing actually work?
That's a great question. That's something that we're taking extremely seriously, because it would be a huge negative if we were to deploy something and put in a lot of resources and then it actually isn't going to be as good as we think it is, or really diagnose specifically COVID-19. So we're keeping in place all of the rigorous standards that the government requires before deploying anything that we would do, whether it's COVID-19 or something else. But we're just expediting that process. So we're expediting the process, but we're also keeping in place the rigorous standards that our government needs in order to make sure that we're deploying only things that are going to be valuable.
How confident are you that Silicon Valley and some of these startups will play a critical role now and in the future for diagnosing and stopping the spread of things like this?
Great question. Every single day, I'm having 2 to 3 companies reach out to me, and I'm taking 2 to 3 meetings every single day. And the technology that I'm seeing is miles better than anything else that's being deployed right now. We're talking from being able to diagnose coronavirus within 3 or 4 days and take a lot of resources, to doing it in 2 to 3 minutes and using very minimal resources, such as a device that you're just holding in your hand, like I mentioned. So there's going to be it's critical, and it's going to be incredibly valuable for the entire U.S. in terms of what Silicon Valley is seeing and doing in order to stop its spread.
Well, please keep us updated. Let us know what's happening in Silicon Valley and what you're doing to assist in this big crisis. We thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Just so you know, we're also about 45 minutes away here from hearing President Trump speak. He's expected to address the coronavirus pandemic. A lot of people speculating as to what the president might say. I'm not going to do that, but I will tell you that we should be hearing from him in about the next 45 minutes. And so that'll be part of this live daily feed that we're doing. And really, events such as that are the exact reason we did establish this a couple of weeks ago. We aim to bring you the newest information, to take you to live events as they happen, to bring you updated numbers, and also to get your questions answered, because I know so many of you have the same concerns we do. How do I stay healthy? What do I do if I feel sick? And how can I protect my larger community? So let's get some more of your questions answered by turning back to one of our specialists. We welcome again Dr. Ranjan Misra, internal medicine specialist. You're based in the San Francisco Bay Area. Ready for some more viewer questions, doctor?
Let's go.
Okay, let's do it. So we will start with our viewer who writes, what is the difference between COVID-19 and other types of coronaviruses?
Very good question. So the other types of coronaviruses, and there's 4 strains out there, those are the ones that we regularly get when we have the common cold. And as all of you can understand now, those are not as severe. This particular strain, so I want to back up a little bit. SARS was also a coronavirus, and that was very, very lethal. It didn't infect as many people, so it wasn't as transmissible, but its lethality was much worse. And the mortality rate for SARS, which also was a coronavirus, was 10%. This is a novel coronavirus, so it's still in the same family, but it's a different cousin. And this particular coronavirus is different, that it's very transmissible. So a lot of people are going to get infected, but the good news is that the majority of the people who are going to get infected will have a very mild disease. I think that we need to understand that, but at the same time, we need to understand that people who are elderly, people who have pre-existing conditions and medical illnesses, those people, if they are infected, are very likely to have a more moderately severe disease, or unfortunately even sometimes a very critical form of the disease.
So it's not as deadly or dangerous as, let's say, SARS, but it's more easily passed.
You got it right.
And I know it's an impossible question. If you had to pick one of the two, which one is better?
Oh my gosh, that
I know.
Yeah, that's a very loaded question. I would pick neither.
Yeah.
I would hope that we could pick neither and have perfect health for everyone. But you know, I'm going to refrain from answering that because I think that that can be misconstrued in a lot of different ways.
Okay.
I would just hope that this, you know, we can contain this and we can stop it from spreading, and we can just go back to our regular cold and flu seasons, things that we're, you know, used to. And for the flu, we have a vaccine, and we have agents like Tamiflu to decrease the severity of symptoms. I'm just hoping that once we're through this, that we can have the same kind of vaccines and treatments for this coronavirus.
All right, let's talk about those who are most vulnerable. I know we've talked about people who are elderly, people who have underlying health conditions. We have a viewer question who asks about a population that we do typically think of as vulnerable when it comes to health. Our viewer writes, what are the dangers to pregnant women?
Good question. There's not that much data on pregnant women right now. So what WHO is doing and what CDC is doing is kind of making hypothetical, conclusions about all of this. And what they're saying is what we know when when pregnant women deliver with being actively infected with the virus, the outcomes are not as good. You can have premature birth. And they're thinking that because this virus is working in the same way, and most viruses do work in the same way, they're all viruses, that potentially this could affect pregnant women who are actively infected with the virus at the time of childbirth. It could affect them that way, but there's no conclusive evidence right now because we just don't have that number, to run stats on.
It is just so new.
Right.
I've mentioned this on the air before, but I was at the swim team the other day with my boys, and I coughed in the locker room, and then I felt bad for coughing, and then I almost wanted to say, I don't have coronavirus, I just drank something wrong. So people want to know, and we do have a viewer question, how can I know if I have the coronavirus and should go for a test?
So the one most important thing that I can say, if you're watching right now, you know your body the best. It's not your doctor, it's not someone else, it's not your mom or your husband or your wife. You know your body the best. And I don't say that lightly. I'm not saying, okay, if you have coronavirus, you're going to know immediately the second that you have a symptom. But you will know that something is off. Now, the symptoms, and I said this earlier, they're how I remember them: FCS, fever, cough, shortness of breath. The majority of people who have coronavirus, who are positive for it, the majority of people have these three symptoms. Now, of course, there's other symptoms that you can have at the same time. But if you're feeling that there's something wrong, obviously, if you've traveled to one of those regions or you have come in contact with someone who's been exposed to the virus, you should be tested and you should be concerned. But if you're having things that are not feeling like this, the usual cold, because you will not have shortness of breath in the usual cold. You won't have it in the flu either. Sometimes when you have allergies, you can have shortness of breath, but we all know how allergies are different. You'll have a runny nose, you'll have itchy eyes, that kind of thing. You're not going to have that in coronavirus. So the one takeaway would be, obviously, listen to your body. And number two, think about if you're having shortness of breath and you usually don't. That could be something that could trigger something in you to get tested so that you're not sitting on it and letting it take over your body and getting tested later on when the disease has kind of caught up with you.
Okay, so you just answered, when should I go to the doctor? How do I know I might be sick with coronavirus? You mentioned FBS, if you have a fever, a cough, or shortness of breath. This leads to our next viewer question. Someone asks, can someone spread the virus without having those FBS symptoms?
Yes, absolutely, and that's what's scary. So there are a lot of people who are going to be completely asymptomatic. And what does asymptomatic mean? It means you're not going to have anything. You're not going to have any symptoms. And maybe you're in a gathering, maybe you're at a dinner, and you actually have the virus. You're actually shedding and you're actually transmitting it to other people, but you have no symptoms. So yes, and this is why, and I cannot stress this enough, this is why we're trying to implement social distancing, because we just don't know how many people out there actually have it right now. It's a lot of people. We just don't know who.
Okay, so we know people can spread it. Let's talk about, this is a question, and this is the reason we have you, is because this is what we're hearing from our viewers. A viewer writes in, Amy from Oakland wants to know, can mosquitoes carry or spread the coronavirus?
We don't have any data for that right now, so that's not something I would be able to answer accurately.
Okay, all right, Dr. Misra, very good. Thank you so much. You've enlightened us all when it comes to what we need to know, and you've answered our viewers' questions, which is wonderful. Sure. We'll put you on a quick hold. Let's recap what's happening here in the United States. As we pop up this map that we've been looking at for the past couple of days, the one thing that does keep changing are the numbers, and Washington State still remains in the lead, if you will. Washington State has more confirmed coronavirus cases than any other state in our country at 457. New York has 328 confirmed cases. Then we find California next with 198. Massachusetts has 108. And so just keep in mind, those are 4 big states on either coast. Then we have Colorado coming in next with 45 confirmed cases of the coronavirus. All right, let's bring it back to the San Francisco Bay Area and turn now to KTVU Fox 2's Jesse Gary. You're a reporter there in the South Bay, Silicon Valley, for people who don't know San Jose. We're talking about workers who need to leave work because of the coronavirus and help for them, Jesse.
That is exactly right, and that's become a big concern because of the coronavirus. People getting sick, taking time off from work, but not necessarily having enough sick time to cover that. And a lot of the lower end wage earners worried that they could face repercussions such as termination because they're taking time off from work. I'm joined by Councilwoman Sylvia Arenas, District 8 here in San Jose, and you are putting forth a new ordinance, first bringing it to the Rules Committee here in San Jose, that would extend the amount of sick time that these workers would get from 3 days, which the state 3 days, which the state covers. You want to make it 2 weeks.
Yes, we want to make it 2 weeks, and this is on an ongoing, this is a model from San Diego, and so it represents for every hour that a worker works, for every 30 hours that a worker works, they'll receive 1 sick day. And so up to 14 days. And then what we're also asking on an emergency provision is that these workers get the 14 days as an automatic.
And these are for ongoing workers, not people who are, just walk-in, seasonal, et cetera, but ongoing workers. We heard some of the stories. There was a press conference here just a second ago. Is that me? Wow. My phone's actually ringing while I'm on air. Bad Jesse.
It's a crisis.
I know it happens.
Crisis,
we heard from one worker who says she works at a fast food chain that, she got sick and you feel pressure either economically to come in to go to work or from your employer saying, if you're not at work, off with your head. You've heard those stories.
Right. No, those are two really different examples. One was her own self-interest in having her bills paid and making sure she has a roof over her family's head. And her coworker asked her, "Why are you compromising the rest of us?" And she said, "Well, McDonald's isn't going to pay my bills. I have to pay my bills." And we also heard the opposite, where a worker was pressured to come into work even though they were sick. This wasn't during the crisis. This was 2 years ago, the latter example, but the current example was their own self-pressure about making sure that they have food on the table.
All right, so this ordinance goes to the Rules Committee, and I don't want to get too deep in the weeds for people who don't sit up and study city governance, but this goes to a committee, and the Rules Committee will have to vote it to the full City Council.
Right. So there's a couple of ways that we can move forward with our local ordinances, and one of them is presenting this memo to the Rules Committee, which we have, and so it'll be heard on March 18th. Hopefully the Rules Committee will say, let's move this forward and discuss it at Council and just approve it, make sure that we get relief for our workers.
So when could that relief come?
As soon as our city manager assigns this to our city council meeting, and of course we'll work diligently to make sure that it's as soon as possible, and then it'll be up to the council to decide how soon that is enacted.
And then if enacted, if enacted, takes effect immediately, and it's for 90-day period, or going forward?
It's for the emergency piece is. We are facing this emergency. We've just reduced our social gatherings, our public gatherings, from 35 to 100. We started it earlier in this month, limiting gatherings to 1,000. We're now at 35 to 100, and I've just got notice from my staff that the Santa Clara County Office of Education is also going to be making an announcement to close schools in this county. So we are at a very high alert stage, and we want to make sure that this gets enacted as soon as possible.
Appreciate you joining us here on the web around the Bay Area and around the country, because people are joining us from here in California and all over, so I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And we'll check back in to see the status of the Rules Committee.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Councilwoman Arenas from District 8 here in San Jose, as they try to get support for workers, particularly on the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum, who are at effect of this coronavirus, where they are sick and they feel pressure economically to go to work because they don't have the sick time to take off.
A very difficult situation. Jesse Gary live for us there in San Jose in the San Francisco Bay Area. Just about half an hour from right now, we do expect to hear President Trump address the nation on the coronavirus. Many people say that he is expected to declare a national emergency as it relates to COVID-19. What exactly that means, we do hope the president will lay out his plan, and we're going to bring that to you live, as we are now just about half an hour away from that. We just heard from Jesse Gary and what San Jose, California is doing in regard to helping those workers who don't feel that they have any agency in either standing up to their managers and saying, look, I'm sick, I can't come to work, work, or workers who may be left to wonder, what do I do? Because my boss told me not to come in sick. Our shop isn't getting the business it normally gets. Now I can't pay the rent. Let's get some answers for you as it results to what's happening with your work life, if you will. Happy to turn back to the San Francisco Bay Area, and let's go ahead and welcome Jenna Gary. You're a senior staff attorney for Legal Aid at Work. Thanks for being with us.
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you.
Oh, okay. I'll speak clearly. Is it really up to each individual city and employer to decide what to do in response to the coronavirus?
I'm sorry, I really can't hear you at all.
Okay.
I'm having a little technical difficulty hearing the question.
Okay, I feel bad. You know what, Jenna, I'm going to let you go. I'll ask our producers to work on that connection so we can bring in Jenna Gary when she's all ready to go here. Jenna Gary, senior staff attorney, Legal Aid at Work. So again, we are talking about the impact that the coronavirus is having on workers, people being told to stay home and not work, people wondering, if my child isn't in school, can I stay home to take care of my little one, and will that cost me vacation days? Does that count as sick time? Is there something else that I can use? Because, you know, we were about to speak with Jenna. She's in the San Francisco Bay Area. Really, any major city, most parents will agree you have to have two working parents to just, you know, keep things afloat financially. A lot of families don't have the luxury of saying, oh, that's fine, you know, one of us always stays home so he or she can take care of the little ones. Let's take it back here to the middle of the country and focus on what's happening in Austin, Texas. I am happy to welcome to our coverage here Rudy Koski, live there from the Fox station in Austin. Rudy, I know South by Southwest was canceled last week, and there's a lot else happening in the city of Austin as it relates to the coronavirus.
Good afternoon, everyone from Austin. Matter of fact, we do have breaking news here from the state of Texas. Just a few minutes ago, Governor Greg Abbott declaring a state of emergency for the entire state of Texas. As of today, we have 39 official confirmed cases of coronavirus here in the state of Texas, and those cases are all over the state of Texas, except for maybe West Texas. We have cases here in Austin, Bell County, and Central Texas. We have cases in the Houston area, Southeast Texas, and we also have cases Tyler, Texas, Northeast, and then North Central up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So the governor today issuing what usually and typically here for us is reserved for hurricanes or wildfires with an emergency declaration. This is the first one that I can remember for any type of medical issue that has happened here impacting the state of Texas. And this is a statewide declaration that the governor issued just about an hour ago.
And so what exactly does it bring to the people of Texas? What does this mean?
This opens up a big toolbox, so to speak, for the state of Texas. Federal assistance for businesses, federal assistance for individuals, low interest loans, that on a financial aspect. But it also gives sweeping powers for the state to take recommendations and actually make some of those recommendations hard and fast orders. We're hearing more in regards to regulations for who can go in and out of the hospital, how they want hospitals to have people who walk in to be screened and treated. Nursing homes are a big concern in this in Texas right now, with the elderly being vulnerable, high risk factors here, and so regulating in regards to visitations, going into making contacts to older individuals in nursing homes, and even we're hearing assisted living and even senior living centers are taking some of these recommendations and applying them to themselves. Here with schools, no schools, we don't have a mass situation of schools, public schools closings, but we did have yesterday several schools announcing that they were closing in the Houston area. Today, the Austin ISD decided to cancel classes. This is all, next week is spring break for a lot of the schools, a lot of the colleges here, so there's a little wiggle room for them to go ahead and do this early. Some schools, though, are still meeting right now. But this gives the state and also gives local entities a lot of extra power to help people and also extra power to basically try to keep this situation contained.
Rudy, I'm curious. I know that Texans are expert at preparing for and reacting to major events such as severe weather. We've talked to reporters across the country who say the Costco is out of toilet paper. There is no paper towel, on the store shelves at Target. Are you seeing that kind of panic buying, if you will, where you are there in Austin?
We are seeing that phenomenon here in Central Texas. Our big store here in this area is called H-E-B. We also have the Costco's, and within the last 24, 48 hours, there's been a real big run, as a lot of other people have seen, on, for some strange reason, toilet paper. Water. The governor addressed that today during his news briefing that we had, and he said, no reason in the world to do this panic buying that's going on right now. And he told people to calm down, and he said stores will be restocking. He has been in contact with the retail association and was given assurances that the flow of supplies will continue, but there is no need for this mass phenomenon that's going on, this panic buying. He said, the storm, and we'll be okay. But yes, we have seen that.
Okay. Well, Rudy Koski, I know you've been doing good work there in Austin for some 20 years. It's nice to be able to connect with you this way. So we'll let you go. Rudy Koski, let's take things back to the San Francisco Bay Area. We were working on getting you some answers about how your job might be affected, what rights you may have as a worker if your job or your financial situation is affected due to the coronavirus. Let's see if I can't bring back Jenna Gary, Senior Staff Attorney for Legal Aid at Work. Jenna, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Excellent,
Thanks.
excellent. So the big question here is each corporation, is each city really on its own to decide what kind of aid it wants to give to its workers, or are there statewide, citywide policies in place to protect workers?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. And of course, this is an extraordinary time and things are kind of changing by the moment, but we are lucky that here in California, we do have some strong state law protections and wage replacement programs that can help protect workers' jobs during this time and make sure they're getting some income if their businesses are shutting down or they need to take time off to care for their kids or family members who are, being sent home.
What kind of questions or what kind of reports are you getting from the people you help?
Yes, we're hearing everything, and it's, every day is a new circumstance. But I would say there's three big categories we're really hearing. One is my child's school is shut down, childcare is no longer available, I can't work. What's going to happen? Is my job protected? The other is, what kind of questions can my employer ask me about my health? What kind of testing can they do? What if I'm getting threatened at work because I'm perceived to have the virus? And, the third is more just if I temporarily, my business is shut down or I'm being sent home from shifts, is there a way for me to try to get some type of pay during that?
And so what are your answers? And I know you're speaking to a nationwide audience, but what do you tell people who have those concerns, wherever they are?
Yeah, so I think that there are options. I want everyone to know that there are already protections in place that have been in place for a long time that allow people job protected time off if they are caring for their own serious health condition, caring for a family member with a serious health condition. There's the Federal Family Medical Leave Act in California. We have some much stronger protections. Also, there are protections for, if you have a perceived disability or if, national origin discrimination. And then also in California, we're really lucky in that we have state disability insurance and paid family leave, paid sick days, and also unemployment insurance, and that people should be aware of these programs. And, in California, go to the Labor Commissioner, the Employment Development Department websites. If you're on a national level, check out your local and state employment agencies that I know, at least in California, they're putting out guidance, and updating it every minute, right, to try to make sure they're covering every sort of situation that workers may be facing right now.
I know usually only people think of unemployment insurance when they are truly between jobs, when they've been laid off and they're still looking, they turn to unemployment insurance. Does that apply in this situation?
Yes. So right now, things are still being worked out, but in the state of California, they have put out guidance that if you are being sent home or, can't work because for safety reasons, and are working less because of that, you should apply, and they're encouraging people to apply for unemployment insurance. They've waived the 1 week waiting period that usually applies for unemployment insurance. They also are relaxing the requirement currently that you're currently searching for a new employment. So as long as you anticipate going back to your current job, you will qualify for unemployment insurance.
Let's talk about some workers who may not feel powerful enough to raise a hand and say, my boss is asking me to keep serving customers. I don't think it's safe. Some workers might think, I'll lose my job if I say that. I have to do what my boss says. Is there anything you can say to those workers who are still employed, still getting paid, but don't feel like they're in a safe situation?
Yeah, I mean, there are OSHA requirements, that employers must follow for the health and safety of their employees. And I think there's strong retaliation protections in each of our laws. And so if that's something they're concerned about, I know, Legal Aid at Work, we have a helpline, we have clinics, and we're here to help employees that are struggling with these decisions, that want personal guidance, but to let them know that there are workplace protections in place and that, I think, at least in California, policymakers and legislatures are trying every day to take broad interpretations and make sure these individuals are going to be protected.
And I mean, I will say I have seen a number of companies step up and say, in fact, I think Disneyland, which is closing tomorrow, said that it will still keep paying its workers even though they're not doing the jobs they would typically do. So there are many companies who are doing the right thing by their workers.
Exactly. Yeah, I think everyone's trying to step up and really make it work. Unfortunately, at Legal Aid at Work, we usually hear from the people whose employers are not doing the right thing, and they need a little extra help on that front. But, I think it's hard times, and particularly you got to just make sure that you yourself are staying protected, but understanding that there are real concerns about having a job to go back to and how you're going to survive when you may not be able to do work for a little bit of time.
All right, Jenna Gary, Senior Staff Attorney for Legal Aid at Work. I'm glad that we were able to connect. You've given us some good answers today.
Thank you so much.
Of course, of course. Another person we keep going back to because she has a lot of answers to the questions we all have, and that is Dr. Ranjan Misra, internal medicine specialist based in the San Francisco Bay Area. Are you okay with some last-minute questions here? I know the president is about to speak in a few minutes. Oh, actually, you know what? I'm going to put a quick pause because we'd like to hear a little bit more about the word pandemic. You and I have talked about how that might heighten people's fears. Many experts say that shouldn't be the case. Let's listen now to what Dr. Drew has to say on that.
It's not staggering. It's only that, and we are controlling it. But the word pandemic will come up tomorrow. And here's what I want you to think when you hear that word. New and widespread, because that's all it means. They're using it because it sounds ominous. And now that virus is in our vaccine mix. Don't worry about the word pandemic when you start hearing it tomorrow. It means something that came out of animals into people and became widespread. And you know that already. You already know that about the coronavirus, and don't get freaked out about that word.
Dr. Misra, Dr. Drew is telling us not to get freaked out. Are you hearing from people who are freaked out, though?
Of course.
Yeah.
This is just a natural reaction, right? You hear the word, and that word, it creates a lot of feelings, and it creates a lot of panic and fear. Of course, people are going to react that way to it. But what he said, what all health officials are saying, what I'm saying to you, please listen. It's just a definition. And that's all it is. The way that the disease is spread is still the same. And, we can get ahead. We have more ways of testing people now. We're going to get a hold of this thing. Instead of having fear, take action. And when I say take action for yourself and for the people around you. So if one thing you can remember from this newscast today, wash your hands. It's such a simple thing. It's such a cost-effective and, essentially free thing. We can all do it, and we can do it multiple times a day so that we can take our personal measure to stop this virus from spreading onto the people that are around us.
Dr. Misra, we're heading into our first weekend since the WHO declared the coronavirus outbreak a pandemic. A lot of people might have family get-togethers, things like that. Should we feel safer if we're gathering with what I like to call our own people, right? It's just my family members. Oh, it's just the other preschool moms. Or does all that go away if you don't know who's carrying what?
I think all that goes away. At the end of the day, your family members are still people. So we need to understand that people are now transmitting this virus. So if you don't know the status of your family member, which we don't because there's a lot of asymptomatic carriers out there, we need to make sure, one, is this party, is this gathering really necessary? If not, cancel it. It's okay, cancel it. You know what? I cancel my husband's birthday party. It's okay, you can do that. The second thing, if you absolutely need to do this gathering or have it, implement social distancing.
So you're telling me not to hug my parents?
You know, I would give them a virtual hug.
Oh.
I would.
Gosh.
It's not going to hurt you, and
Right.
it might help them in the long run.
Right, right. And so, you know, it's interesting that, you know, so I'm bringing up my parents. Everyone I talk to, even though they may be in that you should be okay category, you know, we all have contact with people who are 30 years older than us and 30 years younger than us. So I always say no one lives alone.
Exactly. It's a very good way to put it.
Okay, is there anything else that us coming up on a weekend? I know for most of us, you know, the weekdays kind of lock us into a school and work routine. Now we're seeing a number of school districts there where you are in the Bay Area and around the country close. We see a number of employers say, don't come to the office, work from home if you can. Does that change how we should approach the weekend?
Not really, but I do want to bring up one thing because I'm seeing this on a global level. You know, I'm fortunate enough to have friends and family all over the world, and they're coming back to me with what's happening in their part of the in the world. But one thing that's been very apparent is that we've seen perceived scarcity of things flying off the shelves. And, you know, obviously media has been reporting on it as they should, but that perceived scarcity has now turned into actual scarcity. So what initially we may have just, you know, seen that people were buying more of something, now people are, you know, they've just gone to extremes because they see this kind of behavior that the next person is doing. And what we're doing, unfortunately, is that we're taking things that other people may really need away from those who need it. So if you do need something, take one or two items. Don't clear the shelves because this, like I said before, this is not something that you're going to be fighting individually. We're going to fight this as a community. And in order for us to do so, the same resources need to be present for all of us. So please be mindful of that as we go into the weekend, the next week, and so forth.
I know that we heard from a reporter, Alyssa Harrington, there at KTVU Fox 2 in the San Francisco Bay Area. She said that Costco has now implemented limits, saying you get 1 pack of toilet paper, 1 pack of paper towels. Do you think that's good? Should more big box stores and stores in general be limiting what customers can buy?
If they see that kind of pattern and unfortunately they have to mandate those policies, then sure, because you know, not trying to make light of the situation, but how much toilet paper are you really going to need? You know, think about the next person. What if they're actually out and this was their regular Costco trip and now they have nothing? We do need to be mindful of the needs of others, and that's what we need to keep at the forefront when we go shopping for anything.
And I mean, you know, I live in a major metropolitan area, and I see people who have far less than, you know, your average resident. And I wonder if someone doesn't have the luxury of washing his or her hands every time she comes home. If someone doesn't have a, you know, washer and dryer, you think about all that is afforded to those of us, you know, sort of in that middle class area. I'm sure there is great concern for people who are homeless or who can't go to Costco and stock up on a bunch of cleaning supplies.
100%. And as unfortunate as it is for the homeless people, and I think that we're trying to take measures here locally, and I can't speak for nationally, but we are trying to set up hand washing stations and give them free hand sanitizer. But one thing that I want to point out, one way that you can help is by being a part of the community that you are. So if you see someone in your community that is struggling, if you see someone who doesn't have something and you have a surplus of it, please help out. Be the kind of person that you'd want another person to be to you. And we need to be in this together. We're going to all end up being family at the end of the day, because you would want to take care of your family if they needed anything. Please treat your neighbors and your community members the same way.
Excellent advice as always from you, Dr. Misra. Thank you again for joining us for this broadcast.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Look, we're going to give you the latest numbers here as we look nationwide, show you what's happening with the coronavirus. As we look across the United States, Washington State continues to be the most affected of all the states. It has the most coronavirus cases confirmed now, and you can see that through these numbers on your screen. Next up, we have New York, then we have California. Those are the top 3 states dramatically impacted by the coronavirus, highest number of cases there. Straight to Wall Street here, because we can see that stocks are still above sea level. These numbers look great if you look at them just in a snapshot, but you really have to take this in the totality of the past 3 weeks or so. Yesterday at this time, the slide was immense. It was more than double what we're seeing now on the negative side of things. But still, let's focus on the positive if you can, and that is what the Dow is showing us. Up by 3 1/3%, adding 700 points. I can't help but notice we are below the 22,000 mark, but still. S&P is up by a 3% bump. NASDAQ is gaining about 2 3/4%, so at least that is good for now. Markets will be open for about another 1 hour. We do expect to hear from President Trump really in just the coming minutes. Many people say that he is expected to declare a national state of emergency. But stay with us because our coverage continues. Although we are putting a quick pause on this stream, we are picking it right up for you by our team in Phoenix, Arizona. The team there at Fox 10 Phoenix is going to keep bringing you all the latest information, the latest live pictures, taking you to news events and news conferences as they happen across the country. If you have a minute to and you haven't done already, please do go visit coronavirusnow.com as you can get the latest news for what's happening in your area and far beyond. So on this Friday, I thank you so much for joining us and being part of this broadcast. We will leave you with these numbers because, again, it's been a rough 2.5, 3 weeks, but for right now, the markets are doing well on the plus side of things, and we should certainly focus on that. The Dow Jones is up by more than 3 percentage points, and that's good news, and we'll take it. So stay with us as this live stream is about to continue.